Truth.
Truth. Welcome to Trusting the Truth with Samuel Tolley, where we view the world through the lens of Jesus Christ. We do not view Jesus Christ through the lens of the world. Are you God's man? Are you a saved man? Weren't you called to righteousness and holiness? It's time to step up. All of God's men must step up. We've laid back for far too long. We've avoided the fight. Now the enemy is strong. The sidelines, they are gone. And the battle lines have been drawn. This is a battle that starts on our knees or on our face if he's so pleased. God didn't call women to lead. Men he called to take a stand. To stand for our families, to stand for our land. Men he called to illuminate the way. Darkness must flee in the light of day. Men dedicated to him and him alone. Men who garner strength from his mighty throne. Oh, my brothers, it's time to stand. And when we stand, it won't be alone. How you doing? This is Sam Tolley, and we have another episode of Manly Monday. Manly Monday is when we want to get together with godly men, talk about the things of life, the things, the good, the bad, or whatever the Lord has for us. We try not to shy away from topics that some people find difficult. And today, I have a dear brother that I went to school with, high school, a brother that fought the battle of cancer, as you see in the title, is called Christ and Cancer. So I want to bring on Stephen Webb. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, Sam. How are you?
I'm doing great.
You still look like you're a senior right now in high school.
No,
yes, you do.
That's well. With anything I look, it's the grace of God. It ain't me. Trust me. You know,
Well, he gave me a new hair color to match everything else, right?
Well, that's the hair color of my wife, so don't feel bad. Yeah. Like I was telling in the intro, we went to high school together, class of 1970, and for those folks that don't know, we're just celebrating having a brick or a plaque laid out in front of the Rose Bowl in Pasadena for our graduation class.
I saw that the other day, and I commented on it.
So I know to a lot of people, I mean, what's that? But hey, if you grew up in Pasadena, sort of a little stick to PHS and Muir, the class of 1970, although we loved them too. But, you know, we were Vikings, and that was a time of great excitement during a great, weird, wild period of history from 1968 through 1970. But we're not here to talk about the Vikings. We're talking about Steve. And Steve, now, we knew each other in high school, and then we seen each other probably about every 10 or 15 years, depending on the circumstances of the reunions. But for those that don't know you or know about you, why don't you just give us a little highlight from Steve growing up and then past high school and, you know, your life?
All right. Well, I was originally born in St. Louis, Missouri in 52. My mom and my biological dad got divorced when I was young, and my mom came out to California on a train with myself and my older brother and my older sister to start over. And my biological dad was not a good guy. He was an abuser and a raging alcoholic and everything. So my mom had to escape that. Came to California, and she met up with my stepfather within a couple of years, and they got married. I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. We lived in a La Puente, and then as we got older, my dad wanted to move to Pasadena, and we lived in Pasadena from, I think it was 67 to 83. They sold their house there, but I had moved out by then. I had gotten married in 77, but moved out, but went to Blair High School. I started there in September of 67, and my sophomore year, because it's only a sophomore, junior, and senior high school. And I had a time of my life there. I loved all the activities we had, all the football games. In all 3 years, I only missed 2 football games because of work. And,
Mm.
it gave me great memories, and I still have lifelong friends to this day, from high school that I'm still in contact with quite often. And from there, I just kind of bounced around, but I'd always been someone that wanted a physical job. And so I worked for a company called Beacons Moving and Storage when I was 20 years old. And that's where I got my driving experience. And I later on met my wife. I was 24 when I met her. And we met in Pasadena at a place called the Handlebar. And I fell in love with her the moment I met her. And I knew that I loved her. And we got married 49 weeks later.
Mm.
And we're going on our 47th year of marriage right now.
Wow.
And God definitely had a plan for me that I had no idea. But I just knew that when I met her, I never wanted to be with anybody but her. And we went through our early marriage. We lived in the San Gabriel Valley still. And I bounced around. I got a job with RC Cola delivering soda. After I left Beacons, I'm sorry, I went to RC Cola, another physical job. And from there, I met some guys at some of my stops that were working for these food companies, delivering to restaurants and stuff. And we got to talk, and I got to talk with him during this day. And he said, well, why don't you go down and fill out an application? And, at that time, back in 77, the offer was like $8 an hour, which was a lot of money.
Wow.
$8 an hour in
77.
1976.
Yeah, that was big money.
Yeah. And so I jumped on it, and I got hired, and I worked there for almost 30 years and retired in November of 2007. And from that point on, I opened my own painting business. I just did interior homes, by myself. I didn't really like doing exterior, but I did interior jobs. And I did that from the time I retired on a Friday, and I started my business on a Monday. But
Mm.
the catalyst for it is I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to, even though I knew how to paint and everything, you still need advertising and word of mouth. And so I had painted for a lot of friends, and the Lord blessed me. My phone was ringing off the hook,
Wow.
for jobs. And sometimes I just say, I can't get to you for 3 or 4 months, and we'll wait, and I was really excited about that. And then, but after a couple of years, things started getting, I think it was when the housing market took a dive around 2010 or so, 2011. People were spending their extra money, for that kind of work. So I kind of just faded out of that. I still do it for friends and family and for myself, but I kind of ended that way. And um, just went about my life. And, in Hemet, where we lived, we moved to Hemet, California, and lived out there. We loved it because it was wide open, and a lot of horses out there, a lot of farms out there. and it was just a neat place to grow up. You know, we wanted to bring our kids out there. And I know I haven't mentioned them at this point, but we had 3 children, and and we lived in Ontario, our first house. The kids were all real small. We only had 2, and then my wife got pregnant with our 3rd one, and the house was starting to get a little small, so we looked to move further east because homes were cheaper, and we wound up moving in Hemet, which was quite a
South.
ways away. You know, it was 92 miles to work
Yeah,
one
that was a
way.
little bit south of Ontario,
Yes.
like a lower desert.
Yeah, it's about 50 miles southeast of Ontario. Yeah.
Mhm.
Out by March Air Force Base, kind of.
Yeah, I've
But
been to both. My father-in-law, my ex-father-in-law, before he passed, he moved out of his home into he bought a bounder, and
uh-huh.
he moved into a trailer park down there in Ontario.
Yeah.
And we used to go visit him sometime, or once at least. We stopped at March Air Force Base at the museum.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. So so I retired, like I said, in '07, did my painting for a couple of years, and it just kind of just was a stay-at-home dad, you know, not dad, but stay-at-home grandpa. Our youngest daughter had gotten pregnant at 19 and had a baby girl, and she was still living with us, and we let her stay there with our granddaughter until she was almost 8 years old.
Mm.
And she also had another child during that time, um, a boy, and he stayed there. He was about a year and a half um, old, and my granddaughter was about 7.5 when she finally moved out and got her own place. And from that point on, I'm just kind of doing odds and ends and everything just to kind of make some extra money because we like to camp and go fishing all the time. My wife and I love RVs, and we've had RVs for many, many years. And around 2016, 17, I had mentioned to Roberta that, you know, why don't we look into maybe selling the house? And we have a 4-bedroom house here. It's just you and I and the dog. And we have a pool and everything. And it isn't used like it was 30 years earlier, you know. And she agreed. And so we sold our home, excuse me, and we bought a 40-foot fifth wheel and a dually.
Mm.
And we started traveling the United States. And we've done it for just about 6 years until 2 years ago. We were up in Oregon, and I started getting little pings of pain in my left breast, like right behind my nipple.
Mm.
And I didn't really think much about it. It was probably around April of 21. And they would come and go, you know, once or twice a day. And then probably in June or July, they were becoming more frequent and more painful. And so I mentioned to Roberta, I said, can you put your fingers on here and feel anything? And because you couldn't see it from the outside, it was on the inside.
Okay.
And to me, it felt like about the size of a marble.
Wow.
And it was really hard, but it didn't hurt to touch it. But every once in a while, it would just sting on its own.
Were you a smoker or anything like that?
I was, but I quit well over 40 years ago.
Okay.
And I stopped drinking uh, 42 years ago. You know, I
Oh,
stopped
okay.
drinking alcohol and I stopped. Well, no, I'm sorry. I stopped smoking on my 40th birthday. Haven't
Okay.
had one since. I stopped drinking just after I turned 30. So that's 41 years ago.
Okay.
And so, so I went to the doctor. She said, well, you know, you need to get that looked at. And I was kind of reluctant a little bit because the place where we would go to up in Oregon when we stayed there every summer
Mm-hmm.
was it was a doctor's office and everything, but it was more like a clinic. And I never knew who I was going to see when I went in there. And so the nurse that came in, LVN or whatever she was, I told her, you know, I was there for a medication refill or something. And right before I was going to leave, I was reluctant to say anything at that point, but I said, okay, I got to say something. And I said, excuse me, could you feel this and think you could tell me what your opinion might be? And so I lifted up my shirt, and she put her fingers on there and kind of squeezed it, and I could see the look on her face. And I went, I said, oh, that doesn't look too encouraging. Excuse me. And she says, well, she's anytime, sorry, anytime we have a female patient that would have a lump on her breast, we have to call for a mammogram. And she said, I'd like to have a mammogram done for you. And I thought, wow, really?
Let me stop you
So,
for 1 second. I
sure.
remember years ago, my doctor, when I was living in California. Whoa,
Uh-huh.
I got your ear now. Oh, okay. The doctor in California told me that, and I haven't done it, but she was saying that, you know what? Men need to check their breasts. They're, and just like women do,
Yep.
because you can get stuff in there, and that's something they don't normally necessarily tell men, that you need to check yourself. But go ahead.
Right. And I had never really done that before,
Mhm.
honestly. But when the pain first started, that I remember around April of 21, I remember taking a shower and, soap under my armpit and everything. And then it would touch my nipple. And I go, man, that hurt. But I still didn't say anything to anybody for at least 2 more months. So, um, getting back, I went to the doctor and she said, well, I think we should set up a mammogram for you. So I got in there within about a week over in Bend, Oregon, and they did the mammogram. And after it was done, the technician said, well, can you wait a little bit because the radiologist would like to talk to you? I said, okay. And he came in, kind of looked a little somber, and he said, well, he says, I can't really tell exactly what it is. He said, it looks like it could be um, something gravis or something. No, plasma or I can't remember the dang name right now. But he said, but just to be on the safe side, I think we should get a biopsy. I said, okay. So I came back 2 days later on a Thursday, and they did biopsy, not painful or anything, just went through the side and took about 6 little um, samples, I guess. And he said, well, I'll be the one that'll call you, but it'll probably be either Saturday or Sunday or possibly even Monday. I said, okay. Well, the next morning at 8 o'clock, my phone rang and it
Mm,
was the radiologist guy. And he said, well, Mr. Webb, he said, I have some bad news for you. He said, it's cancer. I
mm.
said, what? And he said, yeah. He says, it's um, it's cancerous. And I said, okay. And I was kind of in shock. And my wife was sitting on the couch, and I was sitting across from her at the rocking chair, and she was on the phone and with our daughter. And I just kind of looked over and I said, it's cancer. And she just dropped the phone almost, and um, I just said, well, what do I do now? And they said, well, I'm going to have one of the nurses get a hold of you or something like that. And we're going to see what we can work out here. And so when I hung up the phone, I just felt a serious fear in my body, almost like when you're a teenager and you get the red lights go on and you're driving a little too fast or something, and that pit in
Yeah.
your stomach just feels so terrible. Well, that's what it felt like, but it was like times 10.
Mm.
And, the first thing went through my mind before I could even open my mouth was like, oh, I'm going to die, you know? And I told my wife what was happening. She started crying. And I actually started to cry because I was fearful. I thought, why would I have cancer of my breast? So she got on the phone to call the kids, get all three of them on a phone call or whatever. And I went out of our RV and I took a walk down by the river where we were staying. And I started crying, and I talked to the Lord, and I said, Lord, I don't know what this is all about. I said, I'm really, really scared, but I have to give it to you because I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have no idea what I'm going to be looking at, but I have to trust that you're going to take care of me 100%. And I felt a peace come over me just immediately, like a warm flush of peace. And it's hard to explain to people that aren't believers, that I didn't think about Christ the moment I got told that news because I was too much in fear. And that's what Satan will do. He'll put that doubt in me immediately. And so I came back to the RV. My wife was on the phone, and I had a whole different demeanor. She had the kids on the phone, and I just told them, I said, well, it is what it is, and whatever I have to do, I'm going to do, And so the following day, which was Friday, that's the day they told me the news. But later that afternoon, I got a call from someone in the medical field down in Bend, and they had made 3 appointments for me for a radiologist, an oncologist, and a surgeon. And I saw the surgeon first.
Excuse me. How did your kids take it?
Not too well. My daughters were really upset. They're, for lack of a better term, they're daddy's girls,
Yeah.
They love me, and they just.
Well, they're supposed to be daddy's girls.
Yeah. And, we were up in Oregon. We're 900 miles away from them. And, but anyway, I told them not to worry. I said, I'm not worried.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And I just got to keep moving forward.
Right.
And that's the peace that is beyond understanding.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just, okay, Lord, I'm all yours. What do you want to do? So I called the surgeon, I called the oncologist, and I called the radiologist, and all set up appointments. And the surgeons who I saw first, and because they had to remove it. And so went to meet with him. He was an astonishing man, just unbelievable bedside manner, just full of love. And he said, I don't see too many male patients. He said, in my 15 years, you're the 3rd patient I've seen the male breast cancer. Oh, really? So he said, but we'll take care of it. And he explained the procedure that they would have to do. It was basically 2 procedures that I would be looking at. One, he said, we will extract it. And if it hasn't spread into the lymph nodes, we'll remove the cancerous area, close you up, and you'll probably get radiation, maybe 30 treatments. And then that'll be it. There was nothing about chemo or anything like that. And I said, okay. And then he said, the other one is, he said, we'll take it out. And he said, we have to, depending on the size of it and where it's located, or not where it's located, but if it's spread, we have to check your lymph nodes. So set up the date. And literally, I saw him around August 1st, and August 12th was my surgery.
Okay.
So, 12th of August. Yeah. Surgery went great. Woke up in the recovery room. Everything went fine. I didn't have any pain whatsoever. It's just wrapped around. Of course, they gave me like 4 pain pills, and I took 1 each day. And that was all I needed, And then I wound up taking my bandages off on my birthday, on my 69th birthday. And unfortunately, that was the second time I cried because of it, because I saw the indentation and it just didn't look like my chest.
Right.
But I cried just for a minute in the bathroom because Roberta took the bandages off of me. And then she started to cry. And then I was hugging her and I broke away from her and I said, that's the last time I'm going to cry about this situation. That's it. And that was it. I haven't cried since.
Okay.
And so I went to see the oncologist then. He told me, well, the surgeon told me that it was a stage 3 cancer. It had spread into my lymph nodes under my left arm. They took out 9 lymph nodes and 3 came back positive, and 1 had already started to metastasize, I guess, which means it could spread anywhere. Excuse me. And so he said, well, I'm going to set you up with he set me up with the oncologist to, let me know what's going to go on there. And the oncologist didn't really see what the numbers were. They call it numbers when you're going through surgery on a cancer thing. In my situation, that if it's a certain level, then it only requires radiation. If it goes above that, it requires radiation and chemo, or chemo and then radiation. And he was pretty convinced it was only going to need radiation. I said, oh, great. First thing I thought about, I get to keep my hair, And so I felt comfortable when I left there. And then we saw the radiologist the following day, and a really nice young man, talking to him and this and that. And he was telling me about the treatments and so forth that they're going to do on the radiation and what to expect. And he said, if you have any opportunity, have you ever heard of MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston? And I hadn't, but I guess Roberta had. And he said, I interned there for 2 years. He said, if there's any chance you have an opportunity that you can go there, and I told him we live in our RV and we travel. He said, I would go there. And okay, and that's all Roberta needed to hear. As soon as we got home that day from there, she started making calls to MD Anderson in Houston, doing all this stuff over the phone, blah, 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 blah. And I had an appointment on October
Wait a
7th.
minute. Where you were, you could have got the treatment there, but he told you if you can go here, this is where you need to go.
No, yes, but I mean, the oncologist said that I wouldn't need chemo because I didn't go above 17, whatever that meant.
Yeah.
And the radiologist said, if you want to get a second opinion, he said, my suggestion would be go to MD Anderson. He said, they're phenomenal. That's all they do is breast cancer.
Okay.
So we got a hold of him, or Roberta did. She did everything. And we got an appointment for October 7th, just about less than a month away. And from that time. And so we packed up our RV, packed up where we were staying, drove down to California to visit with the kids for a week or so, and then drove on to Houston. It was 2,800 miles.
Now this was after you had the surgery.
Yes, I had the surgery, and after getting accepted at MD Anderson, it was okay to be a month away from starting treatment because they had
I'm talking about you felt strong enough to drive, or was Roberta doing all the driving?
I drove. Yeah, I was. That's what it was. It was a month later. I had to recover 100%.
Okay.
Had a little pain, turning or putting the seatbelt on or anything, but just inconvenience more than pain.
Right.
And so we made it there. Didn't hurry. We don't go more than 300 miles a day, and then we'd stay at a place. So I got here February 6th, and February 7th, I had an appointment with MD Anderson in downtown Houston, and they put me through scans, blood work. I met with the oncologist. I met with the guy that does all the prescriptions for the chemo treatments and everything, telling me what to expect and how I could be feeling and so forth and so on. And all that time, I was never nervous. I truly wasn't. I just said, okay. And God's not going to give me more than I can handle. I've always believed it. He will never give me more than I can handle. And that's my feeling. That's my belief. So I went back I think it was a week later. No, October 20th. So 12 days later, I started my first chemo treatment, and took about 3 hours. They went in through my top of my hand on my left hand, and just sitting in a comfortable chair, I could look at my phone. I had my one arm on the armrest, and I had my phone here, just looking at stuff, and watching YouTube videos or whatever, just to kill the time.
Right.
And I remember feeling like taste of metal in my mouth all the time. But when the treatment ended, Roberta was there with me. She drove me home, and I remember just feeling like out of sorts. I felt like a buzzing was going on inside my body, and but I didn't really lose my appetite or anything. But I just felt not normal. I just felt weird, and that lasted for about the first 4 or 5 days, and I started feeling a little bit better. And then by the third week, at the end of the third week, I had to go in for another treatment. And, it was the same thing. The first 4 or 5 days, just feel really down and kind of crummy. And then you start picking up. And by the third week, I was feeling normal, only to redo it again for 3 months.
Mm.
And the whole time during it, like I said, I never lost my appetite or anything. Roberta was always making me, great meals, light meals, but yet filling. And it was not a bad experience that way. The only real thing that I really suffered from was fatigue, constant fatigue, and fatigue.
Oh, fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah. And, she'd want me to take a walk with her and stuff like that. And I'd be out of it. And, a couple of 100 yards, I'd say, I got to go back, and that went on for months, And then when the chemo stopped, they wanted to give me 2 weeks off. And then I started 30 treatments of radiation. And that was kind of it was a eye-opening experience, because to see the technology in hospitals now and machines they have, and you have to lay on this table, or I had to lay on the table with both my arms back like this, holding onto a bar. And they had shaved this part of my left side of my chest, and they put 4 markers on your body, like a permanent little tattoo. It's just a
Okay.
little dot. And they use this computer laser to mark exactly where they're going to zap it.
Mm.
And when they do it, they want you to take a deep breath, so your chest expands. So when the radiation comes in from the side, it doesn't hit your heart.
Wow.
So it was really technical. And I mean, you cannot move one bit. And it took about 25 to 30 minutes for each treatment. And, the first treatment was, is that it? That's it. And I said, okay. And I had to come back Monday through Friday, every day for 6 weeks. And no weekends, just
Monday
Monday
through Friday, every
Yeah.
day. Wow.
And it was, like I said, 25 minutes, maybe tops, for the treatment. And, this is a piece of cake, second day, third time. By the second week, I was starting to feel like I had a bad sunburn. And I could feel it on my back. I thought, oh man, my back feels like I have a sunburn. And he goes, well,
You've been
that's
cooking
radiation.
inside.
So each week it got a little bit more intense, a little bit more red. And to this day, no hair will grow anywhere on this side of my chest. It's like a big square that's completely void of any hair. And the other side is thick as could be, you know.
Oh,
But I went through it, and at MD Anderson, if I could say anything to anybody that has cancer or has gotten cancer, if they have an opportunity to go there, I know it's, I was on Medicare, so I was blessed. It never
man.
cost me a penny. I never made a phone call for an appointment. Nothing. Everything was done by text messages. and so forth. And they were so like professional. It was like a well-oiled machine. I mean, if your appointment's at 8:15 for radiation, you're on that table at 8:15. Period. Not 8:14, not 8:16. If you're not there at 8:16, they go to the next patient. So
Oh,
it's really, really strict, and they have to be that way because they treat so many people. But I rang the bell for my final treatment of radiation on February 24th, coming up. In fact, I have my 2-year scans and blood work on the 26th of this month. And if everything looks good, then I've been 2 years cancer free. So
the 26th of this month, you have a 2-year.
Yeah, February 26th, I have every year I get a scan.
Okay.
And every 6 months I have blood work done because the medication that I have to take after surgery, I have to take for 5 years.
Okay.
It is called tamoxifen. And I put on like 25 pounds as a result of it.
You put on 25 pounds?
Yeah, I weighed 200 pounds the first day of treatment. 200 pounds. Now I weigh 230.
Oh.
Actually, 227.
Okay.
But I've tried everything. I only eat 2 meals a day. I either eat breakfast and dinner or lunch and dinner. That's it. And I don't drink any kind of sodas, any kind of caffeine, sugary things, none of it. I have a cup of coffee is the only thing other than water that I put into my body. And so I don't have any complaints today. I feel healthy. I feel strong. I'm able to do everything that I need to do. Mow the lawn, clean the house, do whatever to
So
help
you can
run.
take those walks with Roberta now.
Yeah, not as much. She's a walker too. She can go for an hour. And I said, honey, I can't do an hour. I'll do 30 minutes, but not an hour. But she goes walking with our next door neighbor every morning.
Wow.
And she's gone for an hour and 20 minutes every day.
I mean, is it like on trails or just a sidewalk or what?
It's in the trails here. The community and where we live here, northeast of Houston.
Okay.
It's called Elm Grove Village, and they all have their own trails and everything. They're all maintained by the homeowners association. In fact, we pay $99 a year for it. But it's like 56 miles of trails that intertwine all through. And that was one of the reasons we picked this place to live, other than needing to be close to my oncologist. Because when I first found out after I got my first treatment that I'm going to have to be coming back every 6 months, I went, what? And I said, well, that's going to put a cramp in us. If we're traveling all over, excuse me, I'd have to fly to Houston, get my blood work done, get a scan, and then fly back to where I'm at. And I thought, that's going to be really costly after a while. And in truth, we were getting a little burned out with the price of fuel and everything had been going up, and with diesel and everything. And I thought, well, why don't we just sell the RV, and look for maybe buying a house? Well, we couldn't afford to buy anything in California. And I didn't really want to move back to California. And our son had lived out here for a couple of years in this area. In fact, he only lives 2 miles from us. And so we started looking online while we were up in Oregon. And, I knew I didn't have to come back here for a while. And so we looked to buy a house, and we bought a home here in September of 22. And we've been here ever since. But
I saw your Lone Star flag up there.
Yeah, there it is right behind me. Yeah.
So
and I've actually become a Houston Texans football fan. I love the Rams. I'm always going to love the Rams, but I really like the Christian quarterback on the Texans, Stroud. Stroud. And he's a very humble young man, and I just love his attitude. And I love the coach, DeMayo, and it's a good team to follow. And I'm a Texas Ranger fan. I like the Rangers, who just won the World Series. And but I'm always going to be a Dodger fan through and through. I get the MLB every year. just to watch Dodger games.
Well, I'm a Dodger fan. I just sort of I was a little upset with them last year when they were saluting the Sisters of Indulgence.
Oh,
Um,
that was horrible. You
yeah,
know, I got to thinking about that, and I was living here, and I thought, why do you think they would have done something like that with Tommy Lasorda as he was
I
an
know
announcer,
Tommy wouldn't have put up with
or
that.
Vin Scully was still an announcer? How do you get away with stuff like that? I mean, I know they did it pregame before the crowds always show up and everything, but it was just the point. Why
Yeah,
are you doing that?
I mean,
What good are these people doing? They're desecrating Christ. Period.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, it was
the Catholic
unbelievable.
faith was very upset. You know, and I agree with them. I think it was horrible.
Yeah. Well, I moved out of California. It's gonna be 4 years in April that I moved Arizona.
Uh huh.
Um, and
What part of Arizona do
I'm
you
in
live in?
Goodyear.
Goodyear. Okay.
Yeah, we're 20 miles west of Phoenix,
Uh
and I'm
huh.
in an area that I also am in the area with a HOA, and I'm surrounded by trails too.
Yes.
So we could walk down the street and be on the mountain,
Yeah.
or a mile away from here, and we ride our bikes around the lake or different stuff like that.
Right.
So, and then depending on how things go on, the wife and I was thinking about, if this get too woke, we may have to go further south. We're thinking it'd either be Florida or Texas, but right now, of course, the housing market is crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, we weren't thinking about leaving now. But yeah, I can't see moving back to California. People I know that live in California, either they inherited their parents' house, or they bought a house like we got out of high school, which you could even do to get a job in those days, or
Hmm.
they're rich because
Yeah.
the price is astronomically stupid.
Yeah. It's out of control.
Mm.
I remember going by my parents' house when we were at the 45th reunion. I was in that area, because we were still living in Hemet at that time. We were about a year away from doing our RV thing, but I remember going to my old neighborhood and stopping to see our neighbors that lived next door that still live there.
Mm.
The house that we had lived in next door to them, it
Mm.
was a little over 1,300 square feet, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but it had a pretty good sized lot. My
Mm.
parents sold it in 1983 for 179.
Mm.
And I just asked my next door neighbor, Dick Hartz, I said, what do you think that house is worth there? And he goes, well, I know exactly what it's worth, $1.4 million.
Right there,
And
right there, crazy.
that was 9 years ago. No, 7 years ago on the 45th.
So, so it
So,
probably is worth about 1.1 now in California. It hasn't lost that much equity. If it
yeah, but
lost
I
that
don't know
much,
how people can afford to live there. I just don't.
it's
The only
crazy.
drawback about living in Texas is the humidity in the summer. It's a whole different animal, let me tell you.
Well, I know
I, I,
summer.
I've experienced, huh?
I know summer. We get 117, 120 easy.
Yeah,
24-hour a day air conditioning between June and almost September. That sucker just runs.
yeah. Do you remember a high school friend of mine? He's still friends with me today, Charlie Guerrero.
I remember the name. Yeah.
Well, he had a sister also named Rita Guerrero,
No, I don't
and
know her necessarily.
they had a brother named Vinny Guerrero. He was a little older, but anyway, Charlie and I have been friends since I moved to Pasadena in 1967, and
Mhm.
still friends today. He lives in Tucson,
Okay.
and he had to get a pool. He said, you can't live here unless you have a pool. It's too much. The heat is just out of control. I don't know how I can deal with it, but it's a
Well,
drier heat.
mhm.
Where here this past August and July, it was 88% humidity and 95 degrees out. And
Yeah, we
it's
don't get the humidity. 95 is like
it's like winter.
it's a decent day here. See, when I go
Yeah.
to California and it's 75 degrees, I need a sweater because you're not used to that anymore.
I know. And
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
The value of a strong wife when you went through that stuff?
I don't think I would have made it as well as I did without my wife. She was a rock. She, one of the things that drew me to her when I first met her was her demeanor and her character and the way she carried herself. And through our marriage and stuff, we go through different things, up and down, not so much between her and I, but just different things, raising three kids, three teenagers at the same time, all these up and down to the parents and everything. I was always in awe how my wife would always stay level-headed about things. In fact, my wife was a big factor of me becoming a believer.
Mm.
When
Oh,
we moved to Hemet.
we got a little bit of time. Tell me that
Oh, I'm
story.
sorry. I'm just rambling. I'm sorry. But
No, tell me that story real quick.
oh yeah, well, in 1990 we moved to Hemet. Blah blah blah. We didn't know anybody. Small community, but it was wide open. Uh, and a neighbor had invited her to go to this church, Bible Fellowship Church.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really want to go at the time. I wasn't really interested in faith at that moment, anything. I grew up Catholic, and so I was afraid of God. I didn't think I could do anything right under God's law or anything. But she was going there for about a month or two, and she would take the kids, but they had a great program for kids. And she would come home every week and say, "Oh man, this pastor is just unbelievable." And she grew up in the Catholic faith and going to Christian Catholic school and everything. Well, I wound up going, after a few months. And I remember sitting there for the first time. And he was giving a sermon and this and that. And I was looking around and I thought, is he talking about me? I
Mm.
thought, did Berta call him and tell him about what I'm like or something? And the next week, it was even more profound. And
Mm.
I thought people were looking at me like, yeah, he's talking about you. That's how I felt. So when I got home from church that day, I was so inquisitive. I called the church on Monday and asked if I could meet with the pastor. And I had some questions for him, and he prayed for me. I cried my eyes out, and I accepted God right there, accepted the
Wow.
Lord right there. And we were faithful believers and attenders for 27 years there, at that church. And it was a great foundation, great men, great men's group. And I have this now here in Houston. We go to Key Life Fellowship. Pastor Kirk Hall, he's just amazing. Bible teaching, non-denominational Christian church,
Mm.
and he is so passionate about Christ, and it's just amazing. And
Isn't
here
it
I am, full circle.
isn't it remarkable that you could be sitting in a church? Wait, he's talking about me. How
Exactly.
do you
That
know
is
that?
exactly
you
how
know.
I felt. I asked her when we left, when we were driving home the second time I was there. I said, "Did you call them or something and tell them that your husband is doing this or has a bad temper or he cusses a lot or something?" That's what I felt. I was being convicted and I didn't really even know it was conviction. I
Yeah.
just thought somebody knew something about me that I didn't want them to know.
Wow.
So when I met with the pastor, he answered my questions. I felt at ease. He prayed over me and I accepted Christ in his office right then. So,
So how did that affect your family dynamics and everything after you you
well,
you changed?
my kids all were attenders. They went every Sunday with us. They had the youth group and everything. My son was involved as a youth counselor and everything. He loved it there. And, as he got older, we sent our kids to the Hume Lake camp every year.
Mm-hmm.
That got to be kind of expensive, but it was a great experience for them. And they got to be with hundreds of other believers and everything. And they got taught all kinds of great things, had great speakers and everything there. They'd always come home just on fire.
Mm.
But as they got older and they got, into high school in the later years, and the friends that they're with and they become friends with may not always think the same way that they do, and they feel like
Right.
they have to fit in with their line of thinking. rather than the other way around. And that happens with a lot of people. It really does, and I kind of understood it, but I just had to be their father. I had to love them. They had to know that I love and honor their mother, and they don't see their mother and father ever arguing.
Right.
I don't think we've argued 5 times in 46 years.
Mm.
We have disagreements,
Right.
but not arguments where we're screaming at each other, and I'm very grateful for that because I love her, and I've loved her from the moment I met her, and it's
Right.
only gotten better all these years.
Well, did she love you when the moment you met her, or did you have to work on that thing?
No, I think it took her about a month. I think I came on a little too strong. I told her, I said, if it was up to me, I would have taken you to Vegas and married you that night. And I would still be married to you today. I could guarantee it. But it took about a month. And then we got engaged just before Valentine's Day, the following February in 77. Then we got married in October of 77. So I'm very blessed when it comes to
like
that.
that Beatles song where she was standing there.
What's that?
Is it a song like that Beatles? Remind me of that Beatles song where she was just standing there.
Oh,
I mean, and I saw her and the way she moved, and I just wanted to
I
be
did
out
not
there.
see.
I
I did not see
understand
her
that happens
from the neck
sometimes.
down. I didn't see her from the neck down. We were kind of dancing in a crowded area there in the bar. It was a handlebar. It was like a high school. I'm sorry, like the girls had to be 18, the guys had to be 21.
Yeah.
And I didn't like going there because I didn't like being so crowded around everybody. But I met her there. I asked her to dance. We danced like 4 dances straight, shoulder to shoulder. And I just kept staring at her eyes, and I just was in love. That's all I can say. I was in love. And I still feel the same when I look at her today.
Okay. Well, that's
So,
good.
and we have God in our marriage. We have God in our finances. We have God in our upbringing, and we have God loving each other. So I'm very fortunate. I don't believe it's luck or anything like that. I believe God put her in my path for a reason. I'm here in Houston for a reason, and I'm a blessed man. I truly am. So I don't really think about my cancer anymore. I really don't, other than that, take that medication once a day.
Right.
It's something that keeps me from producing estrogen.
Okay.
So, and the gynecologist said, well, that will cause the weight gain, and she said that basically a third of her patients, which are mostly female, stop taking the medication after a year or so because of that. They just,
because it makes
it's
them
one
bigger.
thing you go through cancer and you throw weight on top of it. Women don't like that. So,
No.
they do other alternatives. But for me, I'm just going to take it. If that's the only drawback of 30 pounds heavier, I'll take it.
Right.
So,
All right. Well, praise the Lord. Well,
yeah.
That sounds great. It sounds like you're.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Huh?
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No. You. I think you encourage a lot of people. What was it? The great takeaway that I have from our conversation is after the initial shock
Mm-hmm.
of what you had, of what you found out, and you took that walk, and you just gave it to the Lord.
I just
gave it to Him.
I spoke to him like he was right next to me, and I said, I don't want to get afraid anymore. I don't want to be afraid, and I need you to help me through this because I don't know what to do.
That's it.
And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, from the top of my head to the bottom of my toes, I had a warm flush, and that was it. I walked back to the RV, no tears in my eye. Talked to my kids on the phone calmly. They were crying like crazy. I said, don't cry. I'm not crying, and I'm not going to cry. I'm going to go through it, and everything will be okay. It is what it is. They don't like it when I say things like that, but if it is what it is what it is. Just got to go through it.
This is why I like to do a Manly Monday, and I like to talk about people's relationship and how the Lord steps into it. And
Yeah.
with godly men, because in this society, particularly these days, they're trying to emasculate men, and we as men, we don't like to cry.
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta cry, but even if it's not physical tears, I cry out to the Lord all the time because
Right.
because the last person I want to trust with me or decision making is just in my own mind, because I Lord knows I've made all kinds of stupid mistakes throughout the years. And
Yeah.
I try to look for him to guide me, and that's what we as men, we need to always reach out to him.
I I I wonder sometimes that people that don't have Christ in their life, or they don't have their trust and faith in Him, how they can get through things, like this or whatever. And I I know I wouldn't have been able to get through it emotionally. I would have been a wreck,
Right.
and Satan would have continued to attack me over and over, put thoughts of doubt in me constantly. Or you're not going to make it, or you're not going to like it. This is what you're going to feel, and you're going to lose all your hair and all that. And it was just hair. You know, that's all
Right.
it was. It was just hair. I
Well,
mean,
he gave you back what you got allotted for.
yeah, there you go.
Maybe not the whole thing, but he gave it back to you. So,
Yeah, amen to that. Amen
but
to that.
look here, Steve. I want you to hold on for a second. I want to sign off, and I want to talk to you as soon as I get this thing signed off.
Absolutely, not a
But
problem.
I just want to say real quickly before we go, Heavenly Father, we just praise you and thank you for this opportunity to fellowship, to talk, to bring you glory. And it's our prayer that somebody is lifted up, somebody is encouraged, somebody is helped from our conversation. And we say that in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. So let's hold on a second, Steve.
You got it.
So this was, wow, a magnificent time. And we'll see you the next time on Manly Monday. This is Sam Tolley, and I'm out.